Please help me give big smooches to my guest, Matt Boggs.
Hey, Damona, good to see you.
Oh, good to see you too. First time, best time here on Dates and Mates. I'm excited to have you finally join us. It's
We're
been
breaking ground right now.
totally, totally. And I love your work. I love all the content you've been doing for years on YouTube. You're one of the OGs. Like you and I have been in this game for a long time. We have a lot of friends that have been in this game and we've seen a lot of trends come and go.
Mhm.
And so I wanted to get the definitive new standard for so many things, but particularly, I feel like there's a lot changing right now around first date norms.
Mhm.
And you've done a lot of content around this over the years, but where do you think first of all, let's just for red flags. Like I keep getting questions about what are the red flags? Like people want to know specifically what how do I know if I need to run away from this person? Are you getting a lot of questions about red flags?
Yeah, and I think where the line gets blurred is how much leeway should we give somebody on a first date? And what I have found to be a really great mindset. There's a few things that set us up for success on a first date. And some traps that we can fall into that all really revolve around the position with which we hold this first date in our own mind and our own heart. And the first one is trying to discern on the first date whether or not this is the one.
Mm,
And we have all of these expectations about what it should feel like when we meet our person, and then we assess and measure the date of this first person or this first date with this person against the expectations that we have, right? So if your expectation is that when you meet your person you should go into this sort of timeless experience where you can talk for hours,
yeah.
or if the expectation is that you should have massive butterflies or feel a bolt of lightning and electricity rush through you, or see the heavens open and the sky part, and it's like, which was some of what my experience was, or wanting that, and that really wasn't my experience.
I'll be honest, Matt. It did happen to me. I actually write about it in my book, in F the Fairy Tale. I talk about having that experience of like closing down the joint and the butterflies and the skies opening and all of that. And spoiler alert for all those who haven't read it yet. Um that wasn't my husband. I had that feeling several times before and yet it was totally different
Mm,
when I met my
right.
husband, and I'm with you, Matt, like, I think we need to reframe this idea of even what we are looking for and what that signal tells us, and if we're looking at it as a red flag that that person doesn't does not give us that immediate spark, then, we can I feel like we could be looking for red flags all day long. Like, if you're gonna look for the red flag, you will find it.
Yes.
But I'm with you on the like, it's all a mindset thing. What happens if we reframe what the goal is and what we're supposed to feel entirely?
Exactly. So to me, there's sort of two mindsets that really help. The first one is it's hard to screw up the right thing. And so what I love about that is it takes the pressure off of us as the person where we have to be perfect. So often people will go into a date with the, and if you really pay attention, if we really reflect, and it's not just women or men, it's all of us, we'll go into the date. And if we're not careful, the primary goal will be to get the other person to like us before we've even decided if we like them. It's like the accomplishment is, do they like us? Do they want to go on another date with us before we've even determined, do we want to go on another date with them? And so it's this like seeking approval, and then there's this massive pressure that I've got to say the right thing and do the right thing and not screw up and be charismatic and charming and all of these things. Whereas if you go in knowing, look, it's really hard to screw up the right thing. Like I can be myself. I don't have to be perfect. I can not be the most fun person ever. And if this is the right thing, this person's going to resonate enough with me that they're going to want to at least have a second date. which then leads to the second mindset. The second mindset is your job on a first date is not to find out if this is the one. That's not the job. The job on the first date is simply to answer one question and one question alone. And that is, do I want to go out with this person one more time? That's it. Did I have a good enough time? Did I enjoy myself enough? Do I feel enough of a vibrational expansion in my being that I want to go out with this person one more time? I don't know if they're the one yet, but I do know I would love to have one more experience with them. And then one more turns into one more, turns into one more. And eventually, now you might be the person where you do get the lightning bolt, or you might be the person that is the friendship that catches fire. Wherever you are on that scale, eventually you will find yourself compelled to be with the person. Like you're like, I don't just want one more date. Like I want a lifetime with this person.
I'm with you, and, my listeners hear a lot about slow love and how that unfolds differently if you're not chasing chemistry and you're leaning into curiosity. That if you're just I say the same thing, Matt, like, if you're curious enough about this person at the end of the first date to spend one more date with them, then that's your answer. But I also wanna add, I think there's sometimes when you don't even know at the end of the date, right? And which is where, like, giving yourself the window, the grace of time to figure that out. Because, there were definitely dates that I had, and I've heard from so many clients over the years where they get to the end of the first date and they're like, I don't know. I don't know. Do I like them? I'm not really sure. And that's where I feel like then the answer, I want to hear your take, but to me, then the answer is if you're not sure, then it's probably worth one more date to seek clarity. What do you think?
I love that, Demona. You and I are such aligned on this. The way I say that is if you're not sure, learn more. If it's not a no, it's a yes. So in other words, stay until the end. You will be certain when it's the end. Like you will say to yourself, I definitely don't want to see this person again. And that's the point at which, and you don't have to take it to an extreme or masochistic level, but your whole beingness will know. You're like, no, this is full on a no for me. I don't want to see this person again. There's no more value in this for me or this interaction. And so the answer for me is a no. That clarity is, in my opinion, what you're looking for.
Totally. So, are there specific red flags? I know you said if it's the right thing, you can't mess it up. But are there things that you like universally should be looking out for? I know the general like if they're rude to wait staff, if they're but I feel like sometimes we carry around this hidden red flag list that people like don't even know when they're stepping in it. Are there any universals that it's like you see this, just run?
So a couple of these red flags that come up are number one, the red flag when you start to excuse behavior that you wouldn't otherwise excuse because you really want this thing to work out. And otherwise, like you minimize consistent lateness. Like you value people being on time because you value respecting other people, respecting you. You value that. And this person's late. And so you
Mhm.
start excusing that behavior in your mind because you're like, well, they had a really busy day at work, or yeah, I can see how traffic would be really bad. But it's this consistent lateness, right? And these are red flags that we get talked about. But the point I want to really sort of unpack and have us go a little deeper on is it's the internal repetitive energy that we're bringing, not even the other person, that we're bringing when we're excusing that kind of behavior, right? Or he's inconsistent with his communication. Like in between the dates, it doesn't feel great, and or she's inconsistent with her communication. Like the date's great, and then it's just like this kind of dropping off, and then they come back to you with an excuse. And like I was really busy at work, or so on and so forth. And so there's that part of you that basically says, I don't want to make this a big deal. So if you hear yourself saying that consistently, minimizing things that would otherwise be important to you, that is a red flag.
For sure.
And the second thing is when you're making excuses for the other person, like character, and I'm talking about more character things. Like let's say this person says a white lie. Their boss calls, they pick up the phone, and they're like, "Oh, I'm not feeling good today. I can't come into work." But they're laying next to you. The reason they're late is they're spending the night next to you. right? Now is the morning, and and you're glad because you want to have the day with this person, and you're stoked that they actually told that white lie, or moreover, you're stoked because they got out of work, but you make an excuse in your mind like, oh, this makes sense. This makes sense to me. That kind of a thing where you're like, no, these types of behaviors where you make excuses for the other person or you minimize things, oh, that's no big deal, where it's out of character for you. That's the red flag because those things don't change, those things grow. People show you who they are and are typically, as you know, and teach your clients, I'm assuming, is that people are on their best behavior in the beginning.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So they're going to be trying to give you their very best. And so those are the times when you really want to notice the small things. And the third one that I think is really big as far as this red flag, right? Is we all have an internal, like a GPS system, our internal intuition that might not be clear in terms of the messages it's giving you, but it's clear in terms of the feeling tone that you're experiencing. And so on a date, when you're feeling excited, but it's mixed with feeling like you're not on stable ground. Like you might be feeling a little bit insecure, like you don't know if you're enough for this person, or, they've got it going on. They're highly attractive. They got other people's interests, and you don't feel you're on stable ground. That is an internal red flag because oftentimes narcissists or people who are ultimately manipulative, what they will do is they will be super charming mixed with sending you messages that knock you off balance, like little criticisms, right? They'll say, oh my gosh, you're so beautiful. You know what, Demona, you would be really even more beautiful like if you straightened your hair. Like I could see you.
I'd be like, "Thank you, next."
You know what I mean? But like, let's say this guy's
Yeah.
amazing, and let's say this guy's like, you're like, whoa, and then you're like, maybe I should straighten my hair, like maybe, and then next time you're looking in the mirror, like, is my hair not really the way it should be? Like, they'll give you little criticisms in the form of feedback, like you're not enough, you should do this differently, that kind of thing. Ultimately, what it does is it translates into this feeling tone when you're not with them of insecurity and anxiousness mixed with excitement. So they're like blending together. You want to be really noticing the vibration that leads to long-lasting love. And I'd love to hear your opinion on this, Demond. This is my opinion. The vibration that leads to long-lasting love is it can have excitement to it, sure, but it's mixed with peace. There's like this peace and centeredness, and there's this like ease. It's easy to be together. And you feel this freedom to be yourself on the date. To me, that's what I have found leads to always great and expansive things.
Matt, I totally agree with you, and I think that the vibration I really am encouraging my clients to get into their bodies and the way that it feels when you're in the relationship, because I think we can date by list and can have these check boxes, and then our brains are so wired for stories that, as you said, we'll try to make it fit. We're like, "Yeah, he did that, but, it makes sense in this circumstance," or like, "Maybe that was a one-off," and we start changing the story to fit the ending we're trying to get to, and it's really important, as I think we're both saying, to slow that down so you can really pay attention to what's happening in those moments. But moreover, I think what I'm hearing you say is that there aren't a lot of red flags that you can identify on a first date. Like, you really need to see how someone's behavior unfolds over time.
Regardless of what the symptom of the red flag is, like what you're seeing, you're going to notice this red flag based on how you feel and what you notice your own internal dialogue going on inside of you. That's the most important red flag there is. But I would like to add one more red flag that usually doesn't even get categorized as a red flag, and that's incompatibilities of interest. Like you don't have the same interests, like you
Hmm.
don't have common, like in other words, this person's nice, there's nothing they're doing on this date that's wrong or that's bad or there's this and that, but you just don't have a lot of common interests with this person. And the conversation is, can I mold myself to be what this person wants? Like, well, maybe I could get into polo, or maybe I could get into chess, or maybe I could get into these things. And growing is okay, but you absolutely, there's so much research that shows common interests and having a wide variety of overlap in what you both enjoy is so important for the foundation of the friendship in the relationship. And
Mm.
it's that friendship and trust that is the precursor to great love.
Yeah. That's really it. It's building the friendship and building that bond and seeking that even on a first date. And that's why I give my clients 3 must-haves and only 1 deal breaker because I think also our brains are so wired for, it's the confirmation bias. If we are looking for the red flags, we're like, "Oh, there it is. I saw it. I saw the red flag. I saw the deal breaker." So, this is why I get frustrated on dating apps when clients have, 5 deal breakers checked because it's like we can make anything a deal. If you make it a deal breaker, then that's if it's a true deal breaker, that's it. There's nowhere to go from there. But sometimes we're overly focused on the deal breakers and we're not looking for the green flags and the points of connection.
So two mindsets that really, really help. Number one is to recognize that dating apps are like the general public. In other words, there's this weird misconception that when I go on a dating app, these are all the potential partners for me. So they all should look like a certain level. Like they should be a certain level of attractiveness. They should all be a certain quality. And I'm like, no, this is the general public. This is like walking through the airport, right? Or walking through the mall, right? When you go to the mall and you're just shopping, you don't look at all the men and get hugely discouraged because you're like, there's like 1% of the men here. Or you're looking at the women and you're getting hugely discouraged because like 1% of the women here are people I would actually date. Well, yeah, because that's the general population. Same thing online. It's only 1% that you're actually interested in. So that's kind of mindset number one. Like, it's okay if you've swiped no on 99 out of 100 people. It's okay. Like, this is,
It's the online mall. I love
that's
that
the,
analogy,
it's,
Matt. That's amazing.
it is the online mall. But, and so here's where the second thing comes in. And this is where I think for anyone out there who's just felt like really there's tactics that we could get in that help, but I really think mindset always precedes the tactics, the energy, because for anyone out there who's just been you're exhausted with dating and it just feels like your energy every time you get on the app your energy is just drained and you get off the app and you just feel like down, and that's because we go into the app with get energy. We go into it with what am I going to get? What relationship and who is sexy for me? Who's interesting for me? Who do I want? And that subtle energy is draining because it's get energy is sourced in lack. The irony here is, and this is a practice that has just had a profound impact on my clients' experience online and the energy that they actually generate with this practice is what if you went in with a person of increased mindset where you knew for everybody that you saw, like I believe that if you've got the desire for love, that's actually the echo of your partner's desire for you.
Hmm.
Meaning those two things can't exist without each other. Like the desire you have for love is evidence of that love's possibility in your life. And so everyone online has that desire for love, which means that there is somebody for everybody that wants love and is willing to do what's required to attract it. So for everybody online, instead of casting them aside, you're going to swipe left and be like, no, I don't like this person. Instead of seeing everything that's wrong with them and that they're not a fit for you, what if it was just a slight shift where when you're swiping not for you, you were actually sending them this beautiful intention of, I see you finding love. And may you find love and may you be happy. And you swipe left. May you find love and may you be happy. And you swipe left. And you're actually being love. You're giving love. And it's this, okay, I'm gonna actually increase my vibration and the vibration of others with this practice when I go online. And it's like prayer work almost, where you come out of that 20 minutes that you're going to be online and you actually feel an energetic increase whether or not you found anyone that you wanted to respond to, because you've been giving love instead of just trying to get it and take it.
That's an awesome practice, and I hope people will really try that because I'm always talking about the mindset that you bring to whatever time you're spending swiping, and it's hard to shift that mindset without an intentional action, and that's what you just handed us right now. There's an intentional act, and I say, as something similar, like in dating, like when you're out on first dates and you like, "This is not my person," I say thank and release. So it's like you thank the person for the time, the moment that you spent, and you release them to go find something else. But I have to admit, I didn't necessarily think about it in the swiping process. So that could literally be a total game changer, just that one tip alone. But I know you have to go in a minute. So give
Yeah,
us
let's
the secrets that we don't wanna share. What is that line between oversharing and, letting people know letting people in?
so well, that's actually a perfect segue into this because if you go into a first date saying, "What is my intention on this first date?" In other words, how do I wanna leave this person feeling? And how do I want to feel at the end of this first date, whether or not we're a match for one another? And if the intention is, look, I want to leave them feeling expanded, increased, feeling more joyful or with love than before, and I want to leave myself feeling the same way, then it's, well, what stories, what information, what are we giving that aligns with that outcome? So things that you don't want to share. Number one, your shame stories,
Mm,
right? Your shame story, things that you're going through right now where you're still in the messy middle. It's completely okay to share lessons learned that have cultivated character in you, that have helped you be who you are, right? Like I
yeah.
shared the story that people couldn't believe that I shared when I first started speaking about, I went to this seminar because I was having trouble finding love. And we did this exercise where all the women got a chance to vote on all the men on if they wanted to be on a deserted island with us. And we had to tally the number of votes that we got. And I was voted second to last with like nobody, the women by and large did not want to be on this island with me. I was in my early 20s. And it was
What?
a perfect reflection of my dating life. Like women in on dates were voting me last, but I couldn't understand why. And I go to the seminar and they all got a chance to share why. And in short form, it was because they couldn't feel like they didn't feel like they could connect to the authentic me.
Mm,
Like I had a looking good program on it. I was trying to be perfect because I thought if you were perfect, that's what got you love. Right.
mm,
And so this brings us into when you're on dates, it's okay to share lessons learned, like things that used to be vulnerable that are now no longer vulnerable because you've healed from it, you've grown from it. Like now I'm way more vulnerable, way more open, way more close, talk about, yes, I can talk about strengths and I can also talk about, hey, I'm learning and growing here because that's what bonds us to people. The second thing that is super important, not share on a first date, are things that are tender for you. Just because we're on a first date doesn't mean the person has the right to hear it. Like, let's say you have an STD, right? Or let's say that you are in between work and you're feeling vulnerable about that right now, or you just got fired from your job, or whatever it is. I often say it like this: these personal things about us, it's like a baby, right? It's having a baby. Whose hands are you going to put this baby into? You only put the baby into the hands of someone that you know is going to take care of it. It's not going to drop it. It's not going to punch it. It's going to treat it with respect and kindness. And when we're on a first date, we don't know this person well enough to know if they're going to treat our most sensitive vulnerabilities with respect and kindness. And so you can easily say if they broach a subject like, let's say you got a brother or family member who's an alcoholic or someone who's dealing with a really tough time and they're asking you about your family. And so it's not lying to give the portion of the story that's appropriate for that date. And if they go into an area where it feels a little bit uncomfortable, you say, you know what, that's a really great topic. And let's save that for when we've been on a few more dates together. And I'd
mm.
be happy to tell you then.
And then you're sort of planting the seed for future dates too.
You're doing two things. You're planting the seed for future dates, but you're also challenging them to say, like, if we get there, then you can earn the right to receive this information. And then when you do get there and you share that information, they actually feel even more special because they
Mm.
know you're not just sharing it with everybody.
Mm. I love that analogy. Like, think of your story and your secrets as a baby, and really, like, that I think really conveys the preciousness of our story, and I also offer to my clients and listeners the reminder that you can always shift the story. I think sometimes we feel like Oh, yeah, I was asked that question, and it's just like the wheels of the date are just turning, and, like, the next thing you know, you've said your whole life story because you felt, like, powerless to shift it. So I love what you just offered in how to, like, take that little seed and be like, "I'm gonna plant this in the future and change the subject." And even, like, developing some scripts for yourself for just shifting the conversation if it gets into like, I'll say, like, "Well, why would I talk about my ex when I'm on a date with a handsome man like you?" Like, everyone wants to be flattered. They don't really wanna talk about your ex, they just wanna know if you're crazy or not. And, like, remind people, like, you have so much more power than you think you have on a first date.
That's a great line. Often, I would say words and phrases are the tools of relationships, and we're not built intuitively knowing these. And so you collect them over time. You collect them from amazing books or from podcasts like this, or from amazing coaches like you, Demona, where you're like, that's a great line where you can direct the conversation where you want it to go. You don't have to talk about your ex just because they asked. You can direct it to where you want to go, you know? And one thing, I know we've got to bring this in for a landing soon, but one quick example or story of this, of maybe something to always talk about on a first date, or always to share on a first date. And this just comes because last week I had a beautiful conversation with a client of mine named Mel from New Zealand. And she told me her story. And it was so fantastic because on these dates, she decided that she was willing to just speak her truth. And it's like she was going to be, when we talk about being authentic, part of that is being okay rocking the boat, being okay disagreeing with the other person, or being okay just speaking your truth about where you are in this interaction. Like so often
Mm.
people don't want to go on they would like to go on a third date, but they don't want to lead the other person on because they can tell the other person likes them a lot. And so instead, to say to them, like, talk about those tools that you say, hey, you can say, I'm not feeling as much romantic chemistry at this point as I thought I would want to, but I'm also having a great time with you. And so if you're willing to take things slow and see if this thing's blossom, then I'd love to keep seeing you. And if you don't, I completely understand. What would you like to do? And you
Mm.
leave it to them. So now they know where you are and you don't have to feel guilty about leading them on. So Mel did that in a sense where she met this guy over COVID. She only saw him from the shoulders up, like it was always Zoom. Then COVID kind of finished and things lightened up and they could hang out. And so, but the first date was like social distance date with
Yeah.
masks. He
Oh,
showed up and he was 30 kilos overweight. So over 60 pounds overweight.
I was gonna say, do the calculation for this dumb American.
New Zealand. So I know I was like 30
30
kilos,
kilo. Okay.
2.5. Yeah. So he was like 60 plus pounds overweight. And she was like, oh, I didn't know that, but I'll give the date, a go. But he was so awkward and just looking down, and the date was horrible. She decided to give him a second date because they had such good chemistry on the Zoom, like talking, that she was like, okay, one more date. After the second date, it was still bad, horrible, awkward. And so she tells him, she was like, okay, I think we should just be friends. And so they start being friends. And 3 weeks into this, she's painting her banister. And he's like, oh, I love DIY projects. Can I come over? And she says, sure. And so they have such a great time laughing, connecting, painting this banister. She's like, okay, this guy's really cool. She found herself like inventing projects around the house to do because she wanted to hang out with him.
And because she had stuff that had to get done.
Yeah, she's like,
I got a punch list too, Mel.
yeah, exactly. So anyway, long story short, she starts hanging out with him enough where she finally is feeling herself. She said, I could feel my body. My mind was like, no, I'm not really attracted to him, but I could feel my body wanting to be close to him. Like when we'd sit on the couch, I'd want to snuggle into him. I just felt drawn to him. So finally one week I told him, she spoke her truth. And she goes, look, I this isn't traditionally the kind of relationship I would go for, but I can feel my body drawn to you. I would love to kiss you, but I'm afraid it would screw up our relationship if I don't feel the chemistry. And so, what do you think we should do?
And he's a guy, so he was like, "I think we should make out."
I think we should make out. That's exactly what he said. And so, luckily, And for her, to her surprise, there was great chemistry, but she didn't want to be exclusive with him. She's like, look, I'm in my 40s. I'm nobody's girlfriend. I'm not going to get exclusive until I think this really has potential. So I want to date other people, which she knew he wouldn't like that. And I love that courage to speak what she wanted, speak her truth. And he was like, okay. And so they dated, but she dated all these other people. He ended up putting this whole date together where it was in a park with a table and tablecloth and candles and this whole thing. And he gives her this card where he writes her this letter and tells her, I love you. And like he's full of emotion. And she speaks her truth in that moment, which was, I feel so taken care of, and I love spending time with you, and I love where this is headed. But I would be lying if I said that I could say those words. I can't say those words in this moment, and I hope you understand. But I also love where this is going and want to see where this leads us. And he said, okay. And so they continued dating until finally one guy asked her out, and she was like, she felt in her body, she was like, I don't want to hang out with this guy. I want to hang out with my guy that we've been dating. This guy, I think his name's Chris. And she's like, I want to hang out with Chris. And so she told him in that moment, like, I want to be exclusive with you. And it was this beautiful example of a friendship that caught fire, paced at a way that aligned with her truth. And a year later, where they had their first kiss, he took her back to that park and set up this whole thing with flowers and another picnic and proposed to her. And she said yes. And they just got married last fall and had like the most epic wedding of her dreams. And she was saying, I would have never guessed, Matt. Like I would have, if I had done it the old traditional way, I would have cast him aside and never give it another chance. But the two things that really helped were pacing myself, like standing in my truth, asking for what I want, and creating a possibility for this spark of love to catch fire. And I'm so glad that I did because now I'm with the love of my absolute life.
I love that story. Another vote for slow love and for authenticity. And yeah, just speaking our truth. I mean, we're so afraid that we don't want to hurt the other person. We don't feel comfortable opening up. And sometimes if we just speak what we're feeling, we can get our needs met a lot better. Oh, Matt, I could talk to you all day.
Likewise.
This has been so awesome to have you here on Dates and Mates. Thank you so much for being here, Matt.
I appreciate it, Damona. I really have loved talking to you, and let's do it again.